Hello, Mountain Lions Nation. Welcome back to another episode of Lionsverse, a weekly podcast taking you behind the scenes in the athletic department to get to know some of your coaches as well as your fellow student athletes. I'm your host, Holly Stevenson, and with me today we have the graduate assistant for strength and conditioning, Emily Kolakowski. Emily, thanks so much for taking time out of your day to be with me today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, good. And how has the semester been for you? Because you are a grad assistant, you are working a job with the athletics department. So how has the whole thing been juggling for you?
I mean, it's always a lot, but time management's key, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, COVID's been really crazy with you have to really be on your toes and just be able to be flexible. So
Yeah.
it's ironically a little helpful that we aren't in classes with
Yes.
that.
The
But yeah,
flexible
it's been
schedule for
good.
sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So it's been good. I mean, I only have one in class a week. It is
Mhm.
5 hours, but so
That is
it
that
does
is
make
quite the attention span you have to have for that. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so walk us through what you do as the grad assistant for strength and conditioning. What does a typical day look like for you?
Yeah. So our system is a little unique in that usually a grad assistant would mean that there's like a head strength coach and then an assistant and then you have grad assistants.
Hmm.
But it's just me.
Oh.
So I'm I operate as the strength coach for the programs that I work with, which is
Hmm.
basketball programs, volleyball. I help with the softball program. I unfortunately don't see them as much.
Hmm.
And then I work with men's golf. So with that, that means that I work with coaches on scheduling. I work with the athletic trainers to keep up to date with their whatever injuries that are important for me. And then programming. So
Yeah.
I keep up with their programming, and then we obviously implement and do the workouts themselves, which the location of that has changed a lot over the last year.
Yeah.
Currently, we're in Gallagly, which is actually kind of fun.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean, every day is different. Depends on the team. It depends on the seat, like where we are in the season.
Hmm.
Um, and then I coach at another gym in town. So
So you keep yourself very busy during the day.
yeah, and so some days I have class where I TA, so I'm in class all day, and then
Hmm.
I'll run from class to the gym. So every day is different. It's a good
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. I'll say
Yeah.
your tip for time management is pretty spot on with that.
Yeah.
How many classes are you taking each semester then? Just one or two, trying to load up and get done as soon as possible?
So our my program, so I'm in the Educational Leadership Research and Policy doctoral program. It's a
Okay.
go. So we don't really you don't decide your curriculum. It is what it
Hmm.
is.
Right.
We have 8-week chunks of whatever class that you're in,
Hmm.
and you have an ongoing rotation of projects.
Sure.
So the class you're only in unless it's January. So we had a class in January, and then we had 8 weeks, 8 weeks, and then we'll have another quick June chunk. And
Hmm.
there's only one class at a time.
Well, that's good. Helps keep it
Yeah.
a little bit manageable, but it sounds like the workload for each class is probably pretty big for
Yeah.
probably taking one class for a reason, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, the expectations are pretty high in doctoral school, I would say.
Sure.
A lot of reading, a lot of writing, a lot of independent type work.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
So, what did you get your undergrad and grad degree in, and what was the path that kind of led you to your doctorate and strength and conditioning and everything?
Yeah, so my undergrad's in kinesiology. I have an undergraduate degree from Penn State. I worked as a strength coach and personal trainer for, I think it was 6 years before I went to UCCS for my master's program, which was a master's of strength and conditioning. And when
Hmm.
I was in that program, we had a sports psychology class that I really loved. And I've always really leaned towards the more social sciences.
Hmm.
Um, and it was kind of in that class I had a mentor. I kind of adopted Dr. Kirby as my mentor, whether
Yeah.
I wanted to or not. And I was really grateful for that because encouraged me to look into doctoral programs to
Yeah.
pursue studying sports sociology.
Mm-hmm.
And luckily, UCCS had this amazing program. And because I'm a GA, I could stay here.
Mm-hmm.
I qualified for a scholarship because I'm a GA, and I can
Yeah.
continue working with the athletes that I was working with while I was in graduate school.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's great. So what's the end goal for you then? Do you want to stay within college athletics? Are you looking to kind of expand outside of college, or do you want to stay in D2? What's the overall plan?
Yeah, the trajectory will change a little bit. So I'm looking more into staying into research
Mm-hmm.
and sports sociology. A lot of people don't know this. Our school it's called the Center for Critical Sports Studies, which is really cool.
Yeah.
So it is basically a cohort of researchers and scholars that study different aspects of sport. So psychology, history, sociology, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one of the main reasons that I stayed at UCCS was, the accessibility to those scholars.
Yeah.
And so I would really love to stay in research and write and teach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great plan. So how well, we've already talked about why you chose UCCS. So how was the move going from Penn State to Colorado then? Have you what made you choose, I guess, UCCS for for your master's program?
Well, so I lived in a few different states. So I went Penn State I'm from New Orleans.
Okay.
Worked in New Orleans, and I moved back to Pennsylvania to Pittsburgh, and I was working. And it wasn't so much Colorado, but the program of the UCCS program I was really drawn to. And
Mm-hmm.
Colorado Springs is unique for strength and conditioning coaches. You have the OTC, you have the
Mm-hmm.
National Strength and Conditioning Association headquarters is in Colorado Springs. So there's just a lot going on in this
Yeah.
city and in this state, honestly, I guess. So it was a unique program, and then I was really tailored for strength and conditioning coaches as opposed to a lot of times, unfortunately, you have to get like an exercise physiology, and then you get like one or two strength programs.
Yep.
And so this was a whole program designed to develop you as a coach.
Cool. Yeah. So going along those lines, then what made you choose strength and conditioning as a career path for you?
Oh yeah, when I was in high school, I've had really bad coaches and I've had really amazing coaches. It was
Mm-hmm.
really polarized, and the coach that I had that was really great was my track and cross country coach. And he
Mm-hmm.
was just really a student of his craft.
Mm-hmm.
And ever since I was working with him, I was just really fascinated. Like, why are we doing glute bridges? Why is that going to make me a better 800-meter runner?
Right.
Like that
Yep.
kind of thing. I was always really curious for that cycle. And when I went into undergrad, we had you didn't have to declare your major, so you
Mm-hmm.
work with your advisor and say, okay, these are like the three things that I'm really interested in. And it was always the kines classes that
Yeah.
I enjoyed, that I got the most out of.
Cool.
And so it set me, and obviously there's great coaches coming out of the East Coast, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of exposure to some cool stuff while I was at
Yeah.
Penn State.
Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah, I bet.
yeah, so it was just like a passion that, I was fortunate enough to be in a place that I really could facilitate and
Mm-hmm.
then move on as a strength coach.
Very cool.
Mm.
So, when you were at Penn State, did you get the opportunity to kind of work within their athletic department? And if you have, like, what is the biggest differences going from like a very prominent D1 school to a D2 school? Was there a lot of adjusting mentalities or approaches to things like that?
So great question. So I'm pretty old. I'm older than I think a lot of people think that I am. And when I was at Penn State, I don't know if you're super familiar with this, but the Sandusky trials started.
Yes.
And there was a really bizarre, like they fired everyone. They were like, we don't care if you weren't here. It was really bizarre. So
Interesting.
I
Yeah.
mean, so many people, so much personnel was, and that was like right when you start getting into internships in my
Mm-hmm.
curriculum.
Yep.
But not that that was a great thing that happened by any means, but it worked out because I ended up in the PGM program at Penn State. I was coaching at the PGM. I was one of their strength interns.
Okay.
It was a super cool experience for me because it was my first exposure to shifting from like general fitness, like understanding, just general fitness principles to performance.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my big thing. My I guess my experience that really helped shape me as a performance coach, as opposed to just like knowing squats and knowing things of that nature.
Right. What separates you from being like a personal trainer and an athletic trainer and things like that?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So I didn't have a ton of exposure, and like we all had like shadowing experiences in the weight rooms. But wherever and I've been in a lot of weight. I was an intern at Robert Morris University, which is a D1 school. It's pretty small. It's actually, the size is pretty similar to UCCS. It really just, the athletes want to be there or they don't. Is it like what classification it is? You have a culture on your team that wants to get better and wants to do the work, or you don't.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. So you did your undergrad here at UCCS. So you've been a grad assistant for at least a couple of years. So how has your assistantship kind of evolved, or how has your role as the as the grad assistant kind of evolved over the years, or has it?
Yeah, so I started working as a graduate assistant in 2019.
Okay.
And honestly, even when I started then, when I was in graduate school, it was me working with the teams. Like you don't have so much like a head coach that you're working off of or with or assisting. So the role, I mean, I have more teams now for sure. And I think it's, the opportunity for me to stay on, like there's usually a lot of turnover. It's like you work for a year and then you have another cohort come in and operate as your GA. And because I've been here for now 2 years, I think it's given athletes the opportunity to get to know me get to know the team and their unit, the system that they prefer. So I think that there's a lot of trust building. So that I hope. And so there's more buy-in. I think that there's more trust in the system that's going on. And it's not just like this year's GA, I guess.
Yeah.
In that way, I mean, I think it's about the same amount of responsibilities, just more teams and more involvement, I would say.
Very cool. So what is the biggest challenge in your position, either school wise or grad assistantship wise?
The biggest challenge, I don't know. I mean, I think one unique thing is that me still being a student gives, a unique perspective, in that like I kind of get it, like, oh, we're halfway through, you guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
But in that way, it's like, there is a lot of times a million things going through my head. But I think everyone walks around that way. Everyone has a billion plates that they're balancing. And it's just your plate might look a little different, right? So I mean, the obvious answer to that is the biggest challenge has been like for the last year, like where can we lift? How many people can lift at the same time? Like how are we going to make this work? And the resilience of our student athletes has been so impressive. Like they've just been so malleable. Just, they might show up and like, all right, then we're in a different room today. And they're like, all right, well, what can we do in this room? So it's like, tomorrow we're in this space instead of this space. And tomorrow we're doing this instead of that. And they just do it. And they just trust the process that is available to them.
Awesome. Yeah. So, coming out of this year, as things start to like normalize again, and we start to kind of try to go back to like normal protocols and things like that, are there any practices that the school or yourself have implemented with these teams that you feel like will linger on before they are gone completely, or that you would prefer to kind of keep on, like something out of this has actually been kind of convenient for you as the athletic, or not the athletic trainer, but the strength and conditioning coach?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. So we moved all of our stuff, like I was saying, to Gallagly, and I think we're going to keep it there.
Yeah.
Which, where that might be, and maybe it won't work out that way, but what that offered for us was for at least the basketball programs and the volleyball programs, they don't have to go all the way across campus.
Yeah.
They lift. So usually it's like they lift and then practice or vice versa.
Yep.
So they chunk all of their time together. And so they can just end and then they're here, or they end at lifts and then they can go to the court and just change their shoes or whatever.
Right.
So I think that was something that they realized, like, man, this works pretty well. Like, let's try and stay out here on this part of campus. So, especially like when kids come back to school, like parking isn't easy.
Yeah.
So you can stay in one spot, man, that's clutch.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of like training principles, we were still able to execute as much, the hardest thing was we would get into a rhythm with a team and then something would happen and it's like, now it would be like this hard stop.
Yep.
And there was nothing to do. There was nothing to do, like, right? Like there's, and I just mean like nothing to do about it.
Right. So, like you didn't really have a choice. Yeah.
Right. And they would, and it's like, this is just something we're going to have to accept for the next 4 weeks or whatever it was.
Yep.
So, I mean, we had heavy dumbbells that we could hold and there was stuff that we could do. It's fun now. We can get under real weight. We can get under trap bars. We can get under barbells now.
Yep.
It's all back in Gallagly. So, I mean, yeah, I think that was the biggest, probably change that'll come after COVID is like, we might just stay here.
Yeah, super convenient for sure.
Yeah.
Well, good. It sounds like you've kind of gotten a really good plan and a good grasp of being able to help out the athletes and the coaches and everything. So I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I know you are super busy. So we'll just kind of end it here. But I want to thank you again, Emily, for taking the time to sit down with me and chat with us a little bit, give us a little bit more of background of what you do for UCCS, and good luck with the rest of your doctoral program. Because I'm only in my master's program and that workload seems to be overwhelming me. So
yeah. Deep breaths, man. Inhale, exhale.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just
somehow,
Yeah, exactly. I'm focusing on 1 week at a time, just getting through that week, and then focus on the next week. So
exactly, that's all you can do some days.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, well, Mountain Lions, that was Lionsverse for this week. Come back next week for another episode, and until then, enjoy the rest of your week.